Welcome to Energy Top Up, and today's episode brings you your top 5 exercises from award-winning parent and family coach Sharon Lawton and myself. And as a special treat, we have even released worksheets that you can download to work on these practical techniques in your own time, and they are all available for download right at the bottom there. Now, building your emotional and mental fitness is like any form of exercise. It's easy when you have the techniques, but you need to keep working at it for the best results. And what Sharon and I always say as coaches and trainers is that we see and we believe in your potential to grow, and we can give you the tools to unlock it, but you need to do the rest. So today's 5 exercises are 5 of your favorites, but they also happen to be an excellent foundation for holistic self-improvement because they cover self-care, living authentically, goal setting and achievement, managing anxiety, and finally, finding that motivation to keep going. So, let's kick off with the Spices Challenge for getting more self-care into your life.
To think about ourselves a little bit like our spices wheel here. Now, if we're going to look after ourselves, top ourselves up emotionally, or nurture ourselves, it's not selfish. It's something that we really need to be doing regularly. So, as I said at the top of the show, so that we can be the best version of ourselves. Now, as you can see here, there are 6 segments on my nurturing self-care wheel. We have spiritually, that's anything that feeds the soul. Physically, makes sense, doesn't it? The physical things that we can do. Intellectually, creatively, emotionally, and socially. Now, if you take the first letter of all of those segments, it spells the word spices. So basically, if we look after our well-being, it spices up our lives. It's really important for us to be able to do that. So I'm going to set you a little challenge this week. There are 6 segments. Now, if you're able to, what you can do is either write down 6 numbers and pop it in a little box or a cup. And each day this week, just pull out a number and that will allow you to have a think about a way in which you can look after yourselves, top yourselves up emotionally in that particular number. So that almost gives you a week, doesn't it? If it's the family, you can do it together as a family, or you can do it just by yourself. It doesn't really matter. But what I thought we'd do is have a little bit of fun with Audrey. Now, I've got my dice here, and I'm going to roll the dice to Audrey, and we'll have a see between the two of us what we're going to do this week to top ourselves up emotionally. So, Audrey, are you ready for the dice?
I'm ready and waiting.
Okay, fantastic. Here we go then. I'm rolling to you.
Excellent. Got it. Okay, right. I'm going to roll the dice, and I've got a 4.
A 4, right, okay. So Audrey, this week, how are you going to top yourself up emotionally and look after your well-being creatively? Number 4 is creatively.
Creatively, I love this. Well, strangely enough, I have just started a theatre project, and I'm doing it with a local community group, the Dustin Players. We're doing a lockdown version of Shakespeare's Twelfth Night, and that's allowing me to get back into the acting side of things and playing a different character, and halfway through I have to dress up as a boy as well, so that's been getting me creative with makeup, and so it's a lot of fun, and I'm meeting new people and learning new things because I'm watching them perform, and I'm getting that inspiration as well. So that's what I'm going to be doing creatively. I love this. This is a great exercise.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Okay, so my turn now. So you're going to roll the dice back to me?
Back to you. Yep. Coming up right now.
Fabulous. Well, I've got 2, the number 2. Number 2 is physically. So this week, how am I going to top myself up emotionally, look after my well-being in the segment of physical? Well, again, that's fairly easy for me because I am a bit more of an active type person. I need active activities to help my well-being. If you follow any of my social media channels, you will know that I look after my well-being a lot through physical exercise. So I'm going to be doing a couple of online HIIT sessions this week, get the old exercise and endorphins release through doing some exercise. So thanks very much for that, Audrey. I really challenge you guys this week to think around the nurturing wheel and have a think about how you are going to look after yourselves, either physically, intellectually, creatively, emotionally, socially, and spiritually.
I love that wellbeing wheel. I use it to try and mix up my routine because so often I find myself drawn to intellectual pursuits such as reading or learning. So I've encouraged myself to try a little bit of journaling and then bought myself some stickers to decorate the journal. And I found that the act of sticking those stickers is actually extremely relaxing. And so I now enjoy that time to do that with nature sounds in the background. But let's move on to activity number 2. This one is one of my absolute favourites for living authentically. So often our social role, our job, the expectations placed on us, all of that shape our adaptive self. And living our vitals is a brilliant way to get back in touch with our authentic self. Vitals is the acronym I'm going to be using to let you start thinking about what is truly important to you, because our vitals are as essential to being authentic as food and water and air are as essential to life. So if you're not engaged with your vitals, then you tend to have a few struggles. I'm not saying to leave anything behind, but I am suggesting if you focus on living your vitals, you might find your life begins to broaden and open up a little bit more. So V. V stands for values. What are they? Your values, there may be just 2 or 3 of them. Don't have too many, but whatever they are, really concentrate on living those values every single day. Maybe it's kindness or loyalty or humor or professionalism. Whatever those values are that are important to you, focus on living them. And what you'll tend to find is the people who also have those values will start gravitating towards you. It's not a case of shutting out anybody or pushing away anyone that you might feel is a bit toxic in your life, but simply concentrate on living your values. So that's the V. I is your interests. Now, are you a painter who doesn't paint, a writer who doesn't write? It might be that you have interests which you don't engage in because you love doing certain things. If you're not doing them, even just a little bit, you can feel a little bit lost. Now, I'm not saying just because you used to run triathlons, you have to go out and run 5 kilometers or something like that. I am just saying, if you enjoy a bit of health and fitness, get a little bit more into your life. It doesn't have to be a massive change, just a tiny one. So similarly, if you used to like art, maybe just doodle something. T, temperament. Now, temperament is an interesting one because a lot of the time we do adapt our temperament. We maybe have to become very patient in certain situations when we actually get quite frustrated. But when it comes to our temperament, we feel most comfortable when we're allowed to express it in the way we enjoy doing it. For example, if you are normally exuberant, if you're always being told to just keep it down a little bit, that can feel a little bit frustrating. So maybe seek out places where that type of temperament is appropriate and acceptable, or find outlets for it. So really think about what your preferred temperament is and see if you can find a way of using that a little bit more. A stands for around the clock. Are you a morning person or an evening person? Now, some of us are night owls. We work a lot easier in the middle of the night. Some of us prefer to get up early and get things done. If you are working in an environment where actually you're working against your natural circadian rhythms, again, you can adapt, but it can be quite troubling for you. So really think about how you feel most comfortable and see if you can work out a way of getting that into your system, into your structure that you have right now. L, life goals. Now, these are really important because if you think back to the big achievements in your life that were meaningful to you, that will give you an indication of what your purpose is, what you really want out of life. And again, if you're not doing that in your work, find a way of seeing if you can bring that in. So, for example, I love a lot of the creative projects I've done. So I find a way of bringing that creativity into my training, into my speaking. So life goals, remember what's meaningful to you and use them. And finally, S stands for strengths. It might well be that we have many strengths that we're not able to use right now. Again, find a way of incorporating those into your life. If you are a really friendly, outgoing person, then think about a way of maybe networking or meeting up with people online. I know we're still in lockdown at the moment, but really look for a way of exploring and using some of those strengths. And if you're having trouble thinking about them, think about what your friends might say your strengths were. So really focus this week on living your vitals, because they are as important to our authentic self as food and water are to our physical self. While I often talk about values, I want to spend a moment on strengths, the last component of that exercise. I like to talk about gratitude to focus on what you have, but when it comes to personal qualities, I'm actually suggesting the same thing. Rather than worry about what you think you lack, recognize the qualities you have. Because at the very least, this will energize you because you feel proud of yourself to work at the areas of weakness, but sometimes our strengths can help compensate. So for example, one of my strengths is the ability to organize and lead. But as a person, and although I've worked on it and I cover it up quite well, I'm actually a little bit socially awkward. But if I organize a gathering, I'm comfortable hosting and that awkwardness disappears. This doesn't mean I don't work on relaxing in social company, but it just means it doesn't restrict what I can do. So, this next exercise is one of my favourites for goal setting, because this helps you to see what you need to do visually, which helps focus you, and it stops that sense of being overwhelmed.
So thinking back to that first exercise that we did together, you've got your wheel of success. You've also identified what your goal is, and you've also got the numbers of where you are right now. Now, as Audrey said, we're now going to start to think about building on that and looking at those numbers in a little bit more detail. Now, what also can help here is once you've identified your wheel of success and you've got your different segments, is to start to visualize that. So I'm going to come back to the visualization in a second. But the next thing I want you to do is to consider one of those segments. Well, ultimately, you will work around the whole of your wheel. But for the sake of this exercise now, I want you to choose one segment. Now, it doesn't have to be the segment that scores the highest or the lowest, just the one that you feel naturally drawn towards. And we're going to concentrate just on that segment just for this moment. And then you can use this, this strategy to go around the rest of your segments on your wheel of success. Now, choosing that a particular priority, I'd like you to think about 3 things that you could do. Now, that's a really important word, not what you will do. 3 things that you could do that's going to take you one step closer. Because as Audrey said, sometimes we go from 0 to 10 and we just think, oh my goodness, how am I going to do it? I feel overwhelmed. So the best thing to do to achieve our goals is to start to break them down into manageable steps. So looking at your segment, I want you to think about what 3 things you could do that will move you one step closer to your 10 out of 10. So if you're a 3, what's going to move you to a 4? Yeah, if you're a 5, what's going to move you to a 6? If you're a 7, what's going to move you to an 8? So I'm just asking you to think about 3 things you could do that's going to take you that one step closer. So write down 3 things now. Now, when you've written down your 3 things, using those 3 things, and you may have come up with more than 3, and if you have, that's great. Now, using those 3 things or more for inspiration, I want you to choose one thing that you will do in the next 24 to 48 hours that will make a positive impact on your overall goal? What is it that you can do in the next 24 to 48 hours that's going to move you that one step closer to your 10 out of 10 to make that positive impact on your goal? Now, I want you to write that down. Write down what it is. And again, reflect, what impact has that had? Does it feel easier to achieve? Do you feel a little bit more able to be able to tackle that? And the other thing that I want you to do is to write down what your 10 out of 10 would look like. So you've got your wheel, you've identified the segment, you've identified the one thing that can take you one step closer. But let's now identify what 10 out of 10 would look like. So if you were completely satisfied in that area of your life, what would it look like? What would you be saying to yourself? How would you know it's a 10 out of 10? How would you feel? What would you be doing? Write that down. Create a visual representation. Sometimes you can do that in like a vision board. So you create exactly what it would be like. Because if we can associate with that, if we can see it, we're much more likely to achieve it. So what would 10 out of 10 look like? How would it feel? What would you be saying to yourself? What would have happened? So we've got our 10 out of 10. You've got your 3 action points. You've chosen one that is going to take you one step closer towards your goal. Now I want you to put some deadlines and some dates around that. So the thing that you've chosen to do, when specifically are you going to take action? What day? What time? Specifically, write that down. The next question is, how will you remember? Life can be busy, even in lockdown. How will you remember that you're going to do and you've made a commitment to do this thing at this date and this time? What might get in the way of you doing that thing? And how will you deal with that? So how will you cope with the fact that there might be an obstacle that gets in the way? Now, when you've identified all of those things, and you've identified how you're going to remember, and you've looked at what might get in the way, and you've put yourself a specific date and time down, step back and have a think, right, what impact has that made? Now, often when we start to simplify things and we break things down, we feel more motivated, it feels much more achievable. And that's often what happens. People set themselves huge goals and then they don't set themselves manageable action points in order to get there. So, connecting back to Audrey's question, how are you feeling now about your commitment? How committed are you now in taking this action on a scale of 1 to 10? And if you're scoring 7, what does that tell you? You know, if you're scoring an 8, a 9, a 10, fantastic. So if a 10 is wild horses are not going to stop me taking this action, and 7 is, well, I'll try. Reflect on what that tells you. And maybe the action point isn't right, or maybe the time and the date isn't achievable for you. So have a go at that. It's a fantastic tool, goal setting tool. You've now got your goal setting wheel, you've set your action points, and you've committed to taking action.
Remember, any form of change brings with it an element of anxiety. And while specifically tailored for children with its imagery, I have my own version of this next exercise. This is the Feeling Safe Sun.
Now, have you ever noticed that if you're feeling worried or scared about something, because we've woken up maybe from a bad dream, or we've had a frightening thought, that's actually what's happening? We have a thought in our head and we start thinking about that particular thing. Now, I like to call those thoughts in that particular moment bully thoughts, because just like bullies, they want us to feel scared. Just like bullies, they tell us lies about things that are not actually going to happen. So if you can imagine that thought as a little, maybe funny little creature sitting on your shoulder, whispering in your ear, just like a bully. It's telling you lies. So the first thing we need to do if we're feeling worried or we're feeling scared is to recognize that thought. Imagine it as if it was just a little creature sitting on our shoulder, and we're going to flick it off. So come on, let's do that right now. Imagine you've got a bully thought sitting on your shoulder, whispering in your ear, telling you the reason why you should be scared or what's going to happen. And all we're going to do is we're going to turn to our worry thought and flick it off our shoulder, and at the same time say, "You lie, I don't believe you." So let's do it together. "You lie, I don't believe you." Let's flick it off our shoulder. We're going to watch it tumble to the ground, then we're going to stamp on it and squidge it. So that's the first thing that we're going to do, is to get rid of those bully thoughts. The next thing we're going to do is to think about the things that help us to feel safe. Now, I like to use something called the feeling safe sun. So all you need to do is to draw, first of all, the outline of the sun. And then on the rays of the sun, I want you to start thinking about all of the things that cause you to feel safe and warm and fuzzy inside. So what colours give you a warm and safe feeling? Write them down on the ray of the sun. What activities help you to feel safe? Write them down on another ray of the sun. What tastes give you a safe, warm, fuzzy feeling? Write that down. What smells? What places? What objects? And so you fill up all the rays of the sun with different things that cause you to feel safe. And then when you're feeling scared or you're feeling worried and you've flicked that bully thought off your shoulder and told it that it lies and that we're not going to believe it anymore, we're going to focus in on our feeling safe sun and start thinking about all of the things that help us to feel warm and safe. Now, what you might then decide to do is to create a box full of these ideas as well. Anyway, give that a try. I'd love to hear how you get on, and it's certainly one that helps me out when I'm feeling a little bit worried too.
Having a safe place to be is so important, and the sun covers all of those elements of your atmosphere. Now, you don't see this side of the studio because I tend to present against my bookcase, which is on the other side, but I can simply swing my chair around from my desk and look at the clarity of the brickwork. And even if I'm anxious, I might actually count the bricks in order to regain control, if you remember that little tip. Finally, you're now off on your personal growth journey, but how do you stay motivated? Well, simply try to focus on what has got you through before. Life is lived in many acts. Once you have performed something, you bring the lessons with you. And this exercise reminds you also that your character, your story, your performance is unique. Now, sticking with the idea of focusing on where we are, where we're going, and perhaps who we're going with, I would like to introduce a storyboard exercise to you. Now, this is something that was given to me by Welcome Break, who was doing storyboards to celebrate International Women's Day by storyboarding a lot of the journeys of some of the women in their company. And this is the exercise. What I'd like you to do is, I want you to ask yourself 7 questions. And as you can see, you don't need to present it necessarily like a collage or a poster, but you ask yourself 7 questions and have a picture that goes with them. And these are the questions. The first is, where are you now? That's looking at where you are right now. What is it you're doing? What is it you're proud of? Where are you now? But then I want you to go back to thinking about where it all began. Because sometimes where you started may not be where you are right now. You may not have expected to get to where you are right now. You may have expected to do something completely different. And our lifestyles where we began may be very different to where we are now. And little secret tip there, that can help you with your love languages as well if you start reflecting on that. Then look at how you got to where you are, because all of us will have got there, yes, through hard work, but usually with support and lots of opportunities and so on. So I want you to think about how you got to where you are. Next, think about what motivates and inspires you. It might be a person, it might be a characteristic, it might be a thing, whatever it might be. note it down, and then what you've learned from that as well. The sixth one is what challenges came along, and you've got motivate, learned, highs, lows, and challenges. Now, those three are really important because whenever we want to try and push ourselves to do something new, it can be quite difficult to get the motivation to keep going. So knowing what motivates and inspires, knowing what we've learned in the past, and knowing how we've overcome all our lows, our challenges, and to celebrate the highs can really push us through that. And the last part of that storyboard is, what does the future hold? What's your goal? What is it that you want to achieve in future? Now, don't forget, it doesn't have to be something that you 100% have to achieve, because life takes us, as you can see, on a journey in lots of different directions. So it's okay to have an aim, but if it changes, that's fine too. Life is a wonderful, exciting journey or road to go on, and it's great to be able to explore all of those different possibilities with the many different people that you love and that you're happy to have in your life. So that is the storyboard task, and this is so important because we're not in competition, exactly as Sharon said, with anybody else. If you want to be in competition, just try and be a little bit better than you were the day before. Always be the best you and not the second best someone else. And this storyboard will chart your journey and celebrate it. And so that brings me to the end of this highlights reel. They are 5 of my and your most effective exercises for holistic health. So give them a go and let us know how you get on. And Sharon and I are back next week for the final episode of the season. So remember, it may be tough, but simply keep growing.